All right, awesome. So we're here to get started with the tutorial using Python and Repl.it. My name is Brad, and I'm going to be trying to do this live today, and we'll see what happens. But I'm super excited. So if you're new to Battlesnake, Battlesnake is an online programming game. Developers around the world program AIs using web servers to play the game, and then we host competitions and events and prizes and do a lot of fun stuff. So if you like programming, if you like programming for fun, if you want to learn new, if you want a new challenge or you want to learn new technologies or languages, Battlesnake is a really awesome way to get started with that. So I want to start out by talking a little bit about how Battlesnake works at a technical level. If you're familiar with Battlesnake and you've already built one and you've already participated in an arena or a few competitions, this is all going to be mostly repetitive information. But if you're brand new, or you're early on in sort of your development career, this should hopefully be a good primer to what building a Battlesnake actually means and how the game actually works. So I'm going to switch screens over. I'll share my screen. Let's do this. Let's back way up. Perfect. Okay. So we've got some fancy slides here. I will get to the live coding really quick. We'll just want to talk a little bit about what Battlesnake is and how the game engine works, so that hopefully the coding will make more sense for people who are new to Battlesnake. Today we're going to be looking specifically at using Python and Repl.it, which is awesome. We've done these tutorials before using Python and Heroku or Lambda, but we've never done one using Repl.it. So this is really exciting. We think Repl.it's a really great service. And should hopefully help a lot of newcomers and new programmers get started programming Battlesnakes really, really quickly and really easily. So we're really excited to be doing this, and hopefully it goes well. So I want to open up with just here's sort of an idea of what I'm going to talk about before we get into the live tutorial at the end there. I'm going to open with what is Battlesnake and talk about the rules and objectives of the game, talk about the API, how the API actually works technically. And then I'm going to look at these starter projects that are all open source on GitHub. And we're going to actually use one of the starter projects to get started today. So we'll give it a live go. And if you're following the live stream, awesome. You should be able to follow along. I'm going to try to not go super fast. It's also there's not a lot of steps involved to at least get started. So you should be able to follow along. But also, this video will be available on Twitch afterwards. I think we'll also try to put it on YouTube and put it on a couple other channels as well. So if you wanted to, you should be able to follow the live tutorial exactly as I go through it, and hopefully come out of the other end with a functional Battlesnake. So first, let's talk about what is Battlesnake. Battlesnake is an online programming game played by developers all over the world. I'm one of the lucky few people who get to work on Battlesnake full time. It's my full-time job. It's really fun. We have a really good time making this and creating this and seeing what our community does with it, as well as hosting various competitions and events and just getting developers together and getting developers working together and collaborating and learning new things. If you're interested in sort of more details of who we are and what we do, you can check it all out at play.battlesnake.com. I'm not going to get into too much information there, but it's all available, and then you can always jump onto our Slack community or our Discord community and ask us questions directly through there. So let's get into rules and objectives of the game. At its core, Battlesnake is an autonomous survival game. So your AI, your web server powers one snake on the game board, and your goal is to survive as long as possible, ideally out-surviving the other snakes on the game board as well. So each Battlesnake moves around the board, attempting to find food and avoid elimination as long as possible. Your objective is always to survive longer than your opponents. So you can play a game with just you and try to live as long as possible, but where Battlesnake really gets interesting is when you start introducing multiplayer games, multiplayer strategies, and getting other AIs and other developers working in a sort of a multiplayer environment. So that's always the goal, is to sort of out survive and outlast other AIs and other developers that are programming and playing the game. The rules are actually really simple. If you're familiar with the game Snake, you've got, you're a good chunk of the way there. First of all, you have to eat food to stay alive. So every Battlesnake has a health count. Every turn of the game, you're going to lose 1 health, and so you have to regain health or restore your health before it reaches 0. If you reach 0 health, your Battlesnake is eliminated. So that's the sort of the core survival mechanic, is finding food at a reasonable enough frequency to keep alive as long as possible. Whenever you eat food, as represented by the red discs on the board here, whenever you eat food, your health's going to go from wherever it is up to 100%, and so you'll go straight to full health. And your snake will also get 1 square longer, so you're going to grow. And what this means is your snake will eventually, as you eat food to stay alive, you'll eventually absorb and take up more and more of the board, and it'll be more difficult to survive, especially when there's multiple snakes doing this. One of the other core rules of Battlesnake is to avoid running outside the walls. So the game is played on a grid. If you move outside of that grid, you are eliminated. It's pretty straightforward. You also want to avoid colliding with yourself. So if your Battlesnake runs into either your body or your tail or any other segment of yourself, it will be eliminated. This also applies to other snakes on the game board. So not only are you trying to avoid yourself, you're also trying to avoid the other snakes that are playing the game in real time as well. The one sort of minor exception to this is when it comes to head-to-head collisions. So in head-to-head collisions where two Battlesnakes collide and their heads overlap, the longer snake will survive and the shorter snake will be eliminated. So this adds a little bit of strategy into the game, especially it might incentivize you to eat, to consume food at a faster rate or a slower rate, depending on what your strategy is at different points in the game. And it's possible to gain a size advantage over your opponents, and that gives you a lot more options in terms of movement around the board, because now you can actually actively eliminate them. If both Battlesnakes in the head-to-head are the same size, then both are actually eliminated. So that's the one exception to that rule, where if you happen to go head-on and you're both the same size, then both snakes are removed from the game. So try to avoid that one if you can. The last Battlesnake remaining on the game board at the end of the game wins. That's always been how it's played, and so we kind of like to say that in Battlesnake there's no second place. It's you gotta be the last one surviving. You want to be the winner at the end. When we run tournaments and competitions, is a picture of one of the trophies that we hand out, and sort of the T-shirts and stickers and stuff that we have. But we have a lot of fun at some of the events and the tournaments and the competitions. And so if you have an opportunity to participate in one of those, definitely try it out. It's a lot of fun. Let's talk about the Battlesnake API and how these, how the Battlesnakes are actually programmed, and how you as a developer can actually get started. So the Battlesnake itself, when we say Battlesnake, what we actually mean is a live web server that's running your code. So in order to play the game, what you have to do is just deploy code that implements the Battlesnake API to a web server of your choice. It has to be reachable from our game engine, which just means a public URL that we can send requests to. But beyond that, you can power that with any programming language, any technology, any cloud provider. If you want to put if your snake is 20 lines of Python, which mine is going to be today, that's great. You can do that. You can achieve that. But if you also want to train AIs or go down machine learning or reinforcement learning paths, or get multi-node distributed systems powering your snake in these games, we have lots of developers that also go in that direction. And so there's a very broad spectrum of possible solutions to this, and that's one of the reasons we like Battlesnake so much. So any programming language you want, any technology you want, any cloud you want, you can be successful, and we've seen success at all these levels. The actual API is really straightforward. There are only 4 commands that your Battlesnake has to listen to, and 2 of them are actually optional. So the first command is just a get command on the root URL, and this should just return information about your Battlesnake. It'll say things like who you, the author, are, what version of the API you implement, and you also can choose what color your snake is going to be on the board, what head skin you're going to use, what tail skin you're going to use, and there's some other information there as well. But that's sort of just that lets the game engine know a little bit about your snake and make sure that it's alive and healthy and operating, and it's implementing the API the way it should be. The second command you'll want to watch out for, this is an optional one. It's a start, so we'll just post to the /start URL. This will signal the start of a game. You'll get information in that request about the game you're about to start, the size of the board, any placement of food, where the other snakes are, who you're up against, and all that sort of thing. There's no reply required to that, so you can just listen to that and use that to allocate any resources on your end that you want, or just get ready to play a game if there's something that your AI or your web server needs to do to get started. The main request, the main API call that you're going to be implementing is the post/move command. So your Battlesnake web server is going to receive this request on every turn of the game, and you're going to have full information of where you are on the board, where the other Battlesnakes are on the board, where the food is, and you'll then make your decision and say, sorry, there's a truck going by. There we go. You'll implement your logic to make a decision on which way you want to move, and your Battlesnake will return a direction of up, down, left, or right. I'll get into a better example of that, but that's where the majority of your logic is going to be. And then there's the end game, the post/end command. This just signals the end of the game. So if you want to know how well you did, if you want to know the reason you were eliminated, that's the one to listen to, as well as deallocate any resources on your end. So I'm not going to dig into the technical details for every command, but we are going to look a little bit at the move command because I think it's the most important one. So for every turn of the game, you're going to receive a move request, and it's going to have some information about the current state of the game, such as the game ID, so the ID of the game that you're currently playing. It'll give you the height and width of the board. It'll tell you what turn you're on. So if you're on turn 0 or turn 900, whatever turn you're currently on, it'll list all the other Battlesnakes on the board, as well as their locations. It'll list your location, so you'll know which one is you and where you are. It'll also provide you with the location of any food that's on the board as well. And your response is actually really straightforward. You just need to respond with one of 4 valid strings indicating your move. It's going to be one of up, down, left, or right. Again, I'll dive into a full code example of this, but that gives you an idea of how these decisions are made in real time from your web server. The game board is important to talk about really quickly. The origin of the game is in the bottom left, and everything is 0 indexed. So bottom left is 0, 0, and then positive Y in the upward direction, and then positive X in the right direction. It's how you would expect the game board coordinates to be laid out. But it's important that we mention it because it's something that you'll want to think about as you're programming your snake. Other technical notes. If this doesn't make sense to you, don't worry about it too much, but this is for people that are either deploying to other cloud providers or thinking a little bit more complexly about how to actually program their snake and how to optimize their snake. Your Battlesnake must respond with an HTTP 200, so you have to 200 every request, or else we will potentially eliminate your snake or keep it moving in a forward direction. You also have, every Battlesnake has 500 milliseconds. By default, 500 milliseconds. There are some game modes that will change that number, but most of the games you play on Battlesnake.com will have a 500 millisecond response time. This means that your Battlesnake has 500 milliseconds to make a decision, decide which way it wants to move, and then respond back to the game engine with that answer. You also want to note that 500 milliseconds includes round trip latency, so it's measured from the side of the game engine. So any ping latency between the game engine and your Battlesnake server will also need to be taken into account. If you're new to Battlesnake and you're new to web programming, don't worry about that so much. 500 milliseconds is a ton of time if you're using Repl.it like we are today, or any sort of modern cloud provider. You're not going to have a problem with that, so don't worry about it too much. That's mostly if you're trying to optimize the compute time or the response time of your Battlesnake in sort of the more complex use cases. And like I said before, any error, if you time out, if you don't reply with a 200, if you give us a response that we don't recognize, we'll just continue moving your snake forward in the last direction that it moved in. Even if that means you're going to run off the board or run into food or otherwise be eliminated. All of this is available at docs.battlesnake.com. I'll just show that really quickly. That's this here on the left. So if you just go to docs.battlesnake.com, there's the full API reference, which has the technical details for all of these requests, as well as the game rules. So how the game actually runs, how food is generated, what consuming food means. So if you have any questions, I strongly recommend just checking this out first. There's a lot of good information here. We won't go through it all right now, but that's where all the sort of details around this stuff is. We'll dive back into the slides. This is partly our team, partly the Battlesnake developer community as well. We provide a bunch of what we call starter projects to get you started. These are really simple Battlesnake projects that move in sort of like boring and simple ways to kind of get you started and get you thinking about the game. So I'll show you what these look like. If you go to the docs and you go to starter projects here on the left, there's a few that we provide. We provide one in Go and Java, JavaScript, Python, and Ruby. Today we're going to be using the Python one. There's also a whole bunch down here that have been submitted and maintained by our community members. So there's some that use AWS Lambda, some that use Kotlin. There's a one down here that uses AWS SageMaker to get you started with machine learning and reinforcement learning. So there's lots of really good starting points if you're looking for sort of boilerplate code to deploy and run your Battlesnake and implement the API. This is a really good starting place. Yeah, that's all available at in the docs. It's all listed, as well as if you just go to github.com/battlesnakeofficial, you'll see all of the starter projects there as well. So let's dive into the live tutorial here. Let's just pull up some screens. We're gonna go. So I'll go through this. So if I go to the starter projects, we're gonna use Python. So I'm gonna click on the Python starter project here. I can make this a little bit bigger. It should be easier to see. Sorry, just needed to take a drink there. All right, so on the left is the GitHub repo for the Python starter project that I was talking about. And you'll see there's a lot of files here, but only one of them is actually a Python file. It's actually, the code component of this is actually really, really simple and really basic, and all of the logic for the Battlesnake is actually just in one file. All of this is all just boilerplate for GitHub and deployment and that sort of thing. So let's just walk through using this starter project to build a Battlesnake. We're going to be using Repl.it specifically to host. I've got Repl.it pulled up on this side here. I've got my Repl.it account. So let's just walk through this README. So it talks about the Python starter project uses Python 3, which is great. It also uses Cherry Pie to run the web server. If you're familiar with Cherry Pie, it's really simple. It's a simple, basic, simple, easy to use web server technology. It's also, I believe it's multi-threaded by default, which is good if you're worried about performance. So we chose to use it for our starter project, but you could use other web server technologies if you want. In terms of other prerequisites we need to get going, we need a Battlesnake account, which is great. I have one of those here. So I've got a fresh, brand new Battlesnake account with no snakes in it, no teams. I haven't even played any games on this account yet. So that's all good to go. And we need a Repl.it account, which I have. We also need a GitHub account, which I also have. So I'm also logged into my GitHub account, which you'll see. Well, here, we're on GitHub now. So let's take a look at what we need to do to actually deploy this. So it says log into your Repl.it account. So I'm logged in. I'm going to create a new Repl.it over here. So I'm just going to go into I'm in my tutorials folder. I'm going to say new REPL, or I can do it here. I'll just click here. And what we're going to do is these starter projects are built in a way that you should be able to just import them directly into your REPL. So I'll go import from GitHub. I'm going to copy this URL here, this Battlesnake official starter snake Python URL. I'm going to paste it into the import dialog, and I'm going to hit import from GitHub. So REPL is going to it's importing my project now, spinning everything up. Awesome. Sweet. Okay. And then here it says create a new REPL, paste the URL. We did that. Click import from GitHub. We did that. Once it's ready to run, we should just be able to hit run and see what happens. So I'm going to hit run. So now I've imported the project into REPL. I'm running the project. It's going to install Cherry Pie and any other dependencies I have and get going there. It might just take a few moments. Yeah, so you can see it's installing all my dependencies here. It's booting up my server, and there we go. So my Battlesnake is now running on Repl.it, which is fantastic. Going back to the README, it says click run. Once installation is complete, your Battlesnake server will start, and you should see the following. So we should see starting Battlesnake server, engine serving on 0008080. So we see that here. There's the call. There's the starting Battlesnake server call. So we're all good. We should be up and running now. Then it says above the terminal window, you'll see the live output from the URL. So here's the URL. If I go here in REPL, here's the URL where my Battlesnake is actually running, where it's being served. So this is the URL that the game engine can use to talk to my Battlesnake to play games. And that's all we need right now to actually run our Battlesnake and get it going. I haven't even looked at the code yet that runs it. It's going to be this file here, but that should be enough to actually run a game of Battlesnake against the sort of default starter project. So let's do that first, make sure everything's working, and then we'll look into the code and see what it's actually doing. So to get my snake set up on Battlesnake, I'm going to go over to Battlesnake. I'm going to say create a new one right here. What are we going to call it? Let's call it Python and Repl.it starter Battlesnake. Under URL, what I'm going to do is I'm going to copy the URL out of Repl.it here, out of my REPL project. I'm going to paste it in. Description, I'm going to say programmed live during Python tutorial. It's a pretty good description. Project URL, if I wanted to, I could put a GitHub link here to my source code. I could also, if my REPL is public, which this one currently is, I could put the URL for my REPL here, and then other people could go in and take a look at it and see what I'm doing. If you want to share your code, that's the way to do it. And a lot of people do this. A lot of people like to show off what they're doing and the ideas they have and the algorithms that they make. So we strongly encourage it, but you don't have to. Under tags, you can actually tell the other Battlesnake developers and tell your competitors what technologies you're using. So we're going to use Repl.it, we're going to use Python. I think that's it. Those are the primary technologies we're using here. But this just kind of shows off what skills I have, what skills I'm trying to learn, and how the snake is actually powered. There's this checkbox here to allow anyone to add the snake to a game. I'm going to leave it unchecked for now because this is being coded live and I don't want other people running games against my Battlesnake while we do this. So we're going to leave it unchecked, and then we're going to hit save. So you can see, this is awesome. So right here you can see, here's my Python and Repl.it starter Battlesnake that I created. It shows what color and skin I'm using. It has my Python and Repl.it tags. It says that I'm using the API v1, which is great. And then it also tells me a little bit about the latency of my snake. So it says that it took 183 milliseconds to reply to the get command, which is pretty fast. That's fast enough. It's way under 500, so we're happy with that. And so that's good to go. What I can do now is I can actually create a game with this snake. So if I click on the snake, there's this button here to create game with this snake. This is the game creation screen. We're not going to worry too much about this, but if you wanted to, this is where you could create games with other people's snakes and multiple of your own snakes. You can change the board size. You can search for public snakes. So if I wanted to look for, other Battlesnake official, or what are some good... Yeah, so if I wanted to, I could add some of these snakes to my game as well. These are snakes that their developers have flagged as public. But we're not going to do that. I could also just add random battle snakes, so random public battle snakes to my game. So I get a couple there, but I don't actually want those in my game, so I'm going to remove them. And then I'm going to say start game. We'll just play on a medium 11 by 11 board for now, sort of standard game configurations. So we'll hit start, and you can see on the right here in my REPL, all these calls are being made to play the game. So you can see that I'm actually receiving those API calls in real time, and I'm getting my logs. I can go back to the game here, and I can just press play, or you can also just press spacebar, which will start the game. And okay, so it looks like we were eliminated pretty quickly. Well, that's fine. We don't even know what the snake is doing yet, so it's kind of to be expected. You can also go backward and forward on the game board to go one turn at a time. So I can go back to turn 0. I can see, my Battlesnake went down on turn 1, it went right on turn 2, and then it collided with itself. So it looks like it actually went left and ran back into its own body and was eliminated. If you look at the logs here in REPL, you can actually see the starter project is set up to print the direction, the decision that it makes for every move. So it'll print out it got the game started, it moved down, it moved right, and then it moved left, and then it ended. I hope you can see. Yeah, you can see that. The webcam might be in the way, but you should be able to see most of it. I'll make it a little bit easier. Yeah, so you can see the moves here being printed as it makes those decisions in real time. Which is super, super helpful. So let's go back here. Let's go back to the README. So registering your Battlesnake, creating your first game. We've done that. We've created the REPL. We've launched the REPL. We've created a game against the Battlesnake, and it seems to be working. I was able to play the game. So this is great. The next step here in the README is to customize my Battlesnake. So let's do some customization here. It says locate the index function inside server.py. So here I am here inside server.py. Here's the index function on line, on line 15. And the comment for this function says, this function is called when you register your Battlesnake on play.battlesnake.com. It controls your Battlesnake's appearance and author permissions. Tip, if you open your Battlesnake URL in a browser, you should see this data. So that's actually what's being displayed here in the REPL. So let's take a look at this. It has some examples here. API version 1, we don't want to touch that. We're going to use version 1 of the API. Author, if you wanted to, you could put your Battlesnake username in here just to show off that, just to claim that this Battlesnake URL is actually powered by you specifically or controlled by you. You are the developer. We're going to leave that blank for now, but you could personalize it that way. The next option you have is actually the color of your Battlesnake. And this is just a hex, like an RGB hex code color. We're gonna do what's a good color? What's a good color that we should do? Let's get like a pink. What I'm gonna do is I'm gonna steal the pink from this link here. Perfect. Okay, so we put in a pink. So now our snake should show up as pink. Let's choose a head. If I go back to the README, there's a link here to the Battlesnake personalization docs, which I'll open up. And this talks about all the personalization options. So I can choose a color, I can choose a head, I can choose a tail. I've set my color. Let's choose a head and a tail. There's a whole bunch of different options for heads and tails. I won't dig into the specifics, but with major events that we host and major competitions we host, we try to release new heads and tails because it's a really fun way to personalize and customize your snake. Let's choose the... I like the silly one, so let's choose the silly head. And for tail, we're gonna choose the bolt. Let's do that. So, okay, so we set that, and then Repl is really good at this. It'll actually restart. It'll detect that we've made changes to our code. It'll restart, and you can see right here, my Battlesnake URL is already replying with the new data. So my color's already been updated. My head's set to silly. My tail's set to bolt. So my Battlesnake is now working. It's telling the game engine what color and head and tail to use. If I go back to Battlesnake, I can go to the snake here, and I can hit this refresh button. So I'm gonna hit refresh. Perfect, and you'll see immediately my color and my head and my tail have taken hold. My latency was refreshed, but it's about the same as it was before. And if I go to the game, so this is the game that I created, I can actually create a rematch down here, which will start a new game with the same snakes and the same configuration. So in this case, just my snake. I'm going to go here and I'm going to hit spacebar to play the game, and awesome. It was a new game. I moved in slightly different directions, but my color and my head and my tail look exactly as I set them. So I'm super happy about that. Let's go back to the README. So we've changed our appearance. We've updated it. We've refreshed it. Let's look at how to actually make our Battlesnake move in a meaningful, intelligent way other than just doing whatever it's doing right now. So we're going to go here to this changing behavior section. That's the next step in the README. And it says locate the move function in server.py. So we're going to go here. We're going to find it. Here it is on line 41. And the comment says this function is called on every turn of a game. It's how your snake decides where to move. Valid moves are up, down, left, or right. Use the information in the request to decide your next move. So here it's setting up the request. We're not going to worry about that so much. Let's take a look at what this is doing by default. Perfect. Okay. So by default, you can see it's listing possible moves. And then it's calling random.choice on those moves. So it's just choosing. All we're doing right now, all the starter project does by default is choose a random direction to move in, and then it just moves in that direction. You can see there's a print statement here to spit out what direction we've chose to move in. That's what you're seeing in the logs. They'll say move up or move right or move left. And then we return our move back to the game engine to tell it which way we want to go. So that explains why, like if I create another rematch and we play this game, why my Battlesnake seemingly like doesn't do very well, right? Like it just eventually it always collides with itself. No matter how many games I create or how many games I run, I eventually just collide with myself. There, that one I lasted a little bit longer and then collided with myself again. So if you move randomly, a pretty high chance you're just going to go back on yourself and collide. So let's try to do something different. We don't have to be super smart yet. Let's just say instead of possible moves, instead of selecting a random move, let's just say move equals up. Or let's go down. That's more interesting because up is one of the default moves. So we'll go, let's just say move down. My Repl will restart automatically, which is great. I can go over here on the left. I can say create rematch, which will start a brand new game. And then I can play the game. So I'm going to step through it slowly, and you'll see my snake immediately just goes all the way down and then runs off the board. That's awesome. That's exactly what I wanted to do, and it was super easy to do that. You get the idea, but like if you just chose left, and then Repl will restart, I can create a new game. In this case, my snake's going to go left and run off the board. So now I'm controlling the direction my Battlesnake is moving with code, just by setting this move value to the direction I want to go in. Let's go back to the README. So now we've got to the point where we're able to control our Battlesnake using code that's running in our Repl. If we want to develop our Battlesnake further, which is always which is where this is where the meat of the Battlesnake development sort of starts, and this is where things get more complex and more interesting, is when you try to actually survive a little bit longer. So here's some ideas for sort of early goals for getting going. A really good early goal is to not collide with yourself, and then the next one that we see most developers do is avoid the walls, which we're doing right now. So if we're moving, or which is giving us trouble right now in that game, if we just move constantly left, we'll eventually run off the wall or off the game board and we'll be eliminated. So how would we move to be smarter than that is an interesting strategy. Try to move towards more food, and then also avoid colliding with other snakes. So these are sort of good checkpoints that you can set for yourself as you're getting started making your Battlesnake a little bit smarter. And there's a whole bunch of different strategies and complex ideas that you can implement beyond this, but this is a really good starting point if you're just getting going. Let's do, before we sort of end the first part of this tutorial here, let's just try to avoid the walls in a very simple case. So let's go back to our code. We'll go back to our game. Also, we'll see. So right now we're just moving left. My Battlesnake just goes left and then runs off the wall. So let's keep that, and let's try to make it not run off that leftmost wall there. So what we can do is we can actually look at the data that we're provided. So what we want to do is say, I don't want to dig into the actual data that's being provided yet, but I'll code up a quick example to show you how to do this, and you can go look at the docs afterwards and get a better feel for what information you have. But keep in mind that this data parameter here has a whole bunch of information in it about the game board and where your snake is and where the other snakes are and where the food is. So you can use it to make decisions. So what we're going to do is we're going to say if data at u, so this is going to be data about my Battlesnake specifically, head at x equals 0. So what I'm saying is that if I'm gonna move left by default, but I'm gonna move left by default, but if my head x coordinate is 0, then I actually want to move down instead. So it's really really basic, simple logic here, but it'll give you an idea of how to use this information. So we're gonna set that. Our Repl, we'll have to restart our Repl because we had a syntax error in there. It looks like it's restarted. I can create a rematch. Okay, and so here's what we're expecting to happen. So if our logic is working correctly, our snake should go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 turns left, and then it should go down, and then it should run off the board, which is great. So let's see what happens. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And then we'll start to hit this condition here in the code because our x coordinate will be 0. And then we're going to go down instead, which we do. And then we run off the board. You could take this one step further and say, if data at u head, so if our y coordinate is also 0, like if we're in that bottom corner, move equals right. So we'll just add another condition here, add some more, now we're able to avoid that left wall. Let's see if we can avoid the bottom wall as well. We'll hit run on our REPL, create a new game. And now our snake should go left and then down and then right, and then it'll probably just run off the right edge of the board. So there we go. So you can see here how I'm using data about the game board and the current state and my current location to change my decision on which way I want to go. That's the core intelligence of your Battlesnake, and that's where you're going to be doing most of your programming. The last thing I want to do is just show you an example of what a multi-snake game looks like. So if I go to create game, you can actually add your own Battlesnake to the game multiple times and create a multiplayer game. So I'm going to start this game. You'll see here. So here's my snake is in the game twice, so it's playing against itself. I can hit go, and you'll see both of them, in that case, both of them immediately go left. And then the top one starts to go down first, and they actually do a head-on-head collision. And the shorter one's eliminated, the longer one survives. So that's what's happening there. You can rematch again and see what happens. But this is just another way to test your snake, test your Battlesnake early. You can see that's a really good example where they both follow the same pattern. They go left immediately, and then down and right along the bottom row, and then one of them moves out of bounds before the other one does. So that's all I'm going to do right now. I'm going to take a couple minutes of break, and then I'll come back and we'll try to implement some more of those rules. But in terms of the getting started tutorial content and using REPL, which is a really great tool for powering your Battlesnake early on, that's where we'll leave it. So thanks so much for tuning in and watching. Check if you want to get involved, if you want to build a Battlesnake, you can go to play.battlesnake.com. You can sign up, it's free. REPL is free to get started also, so you can get started pretty quickly and see if you can program a snake that will outlast your friends or outlast other developers around the world. Awesome. We're going to take a short break, and we'll be back in a couple minutes, and we'll see what else we can do with this snake.